I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And joining me, as always, my co-host, Stephen Young of Roto-Grinders, better known as Stevie TPFL. And this week, we're talking bets for the Auto Trader Echo Park Automotive 400 at Texas Motor Speedway here on Running Hot. Last weekend at Martinsville, William Byron used some late pit strategy and held off his Hendrick Motorsports teammates on a late restart to claim the win, coming in ahead of teammates Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott in a 1-2-3 finish for Hendrick Motorsports on an important weekend for that organization. Although I will say a mixed bag, I think, on the racing product at Martinsville based off what I've seen around the industry. Stevie, I'm curious your thoughts on the racing at Martinsville and maybe even bigger picture, these shorter, flatter tracks. What were your thoughts on Martinsville? Because I know for me, it was certainly a letdown of a product on the track.
It was awful. I mean, let's just call it. I'm not going to go on like a wild rant or anything. We're here to talk betting. But I mean, even from a betting standpoint, like when you can't pass and all the passing is happening on pit road and like strategy pitting early, like Byron won that race because he pitted like 3 or 4 laps early. But the fact that like Joey Logano took 2 tires at the end of stage 1 and was running on like 75 lap older tires and pulling away from guys with new tires, like that's just not a good product on the racetrack for betting, for fantasy, for fans. So I thought the Martinsville race was awful. I think Martinsville is one of those tracks where we need something different. I don't know, I'm not an expert in, do we need more horsepower? Do we need more tire fall off? I don't know. I'm not sitting here, and I think NASCAR's trying, so I don't want to like discredit NASCAR. They're trying to figure it out, but we have to figure it out or we're going to lose Martinsville because the racing product on track is awful. So I can't be more excited to get to a 1.5 after what we watched last weekend at Martinsville.
Yeah, definitely. The bread and butter of the next-gen car has been the 1.5-mile tracks, which is, of course, where we'll be. But I'm with you. I'm definitely not hating on NASCAR or anything like that. They're definitely trying to make the short track product, the short flat track, especially product, better. Just hasn't quite gotten there yet. You mentioned Joey Logano being able to hold off and or pull away from guys on new tires. We also had, drivers like Austin Dillon in 33rd, 34th place, holding off the leaders, preventing himself from getting lapped. It's just so hard to pass at Martinsville right now. So definitely, I think something that NASCAR is still going to keep working on and hopefully making better in the future. But speaking of the future, this weekend, we are heading to Texas Motor Speedway. Texas is a 1.5-mile track. It was repaved back in 2017, repaved and reconfigured. 2 of the turns were made a little lower in banking and wider in the turns, but then one of the other pairs of turns was, of course, kept like the classic Texas Charlotte style tracks with the higher banking. So a little bit different from Las Vegas, which we were at earlier this year. We'll talk about similarities and differences there, but overall, Stevie, what is racing at Texas Motor Speedway in the next gen car like?
Fantastic. I mean, I saw some people complaining that we're going to Texas this weekend, and I don't understand why. I mean, the racing, the first year that we came here, like the tires, I think kind of turned people off a little bit, but like we fixed that issue last year, and like the racing was fantastic when we didn't have the tire issues. And I mean, part of the tire issues is like the teams just being way too aggressive with tire pressures anyway. So like, yeah, we look at Goodyear because it's a Goodyear product, but most of the time it's the teams trying to go too fast with tire pressures. But I mean, the racing at Texas has been great. Like you look back and you watch last year's race and it's like, there's a ton of passing. Fast cars got to the front. Even like Ryan Blaney got a pit road penalty and went to the back and drove through the field. So like predicting speed is where we're at this weekend. So, I mean, I absolutely love the racing on any 1.5. I mean, I feel like the next gen car was built for 1.5s. It's kind of ruined the short track, flat track like Martinsville, and we're trying to figure that out. But I mean, even the road course racing, I feel like has been a little bit better this year. So, I mean, I'm so excited for Texas this weekend. I think the racing is going to be great. And I mean, also, like, we got to remember we're running a April Texas race instead of a late in the year race. So I also think that like potential cooler temps more grip on the racetrack, like we're going to see even more passing this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great race. And you mentioned it. Like, I saw people too. They were like, "Oh, Martinsville, what a terrible race. I can't wait to the next race." Looks at schedule, disappointment. I'm like, no, excitement. Texas is awesome. It for some reason has a bad rap from pre-next gen, but the next gen cars really changed Texas. Both races were great. I know there were, like I said, there were the tire issues 2022, but when they weren't having tire issues, when they're actually racing in between those issues, the racing was awesome. And then last year, the racing was awesome. So I'm super excited for Texas from a racing product. Maybe a little less so, as you'll hear, on the betting side of things, but I am definitely still excited to watch a great race at Texas. But this is our second 1.5 mile track this year. Earlier this year, we were at Las Vegas, and certainly Kyle Larson plus the Toyotas were the class of the field. Is Texas, is Vegas a good comp for Texas? Are they similar? Are they different? What do you think about, being able to use Vegas data for Texas, Stevie?
Well, the one thing that it has going for it is this is the tire that we ran at Texas last year and the tire that we ran at Vegas earlier this year. So that's the only two races that we've run with this tire. So I think that's a positive. We're going to see this tire again at Kansas. I think Texas probably comps best to like Charlotte, but like this is a 400-mile race. Charlotte starts in the day, goes to the nighttime. It's a 600-mile race. So like I feel like Texas, you're just kind of probably grouping it together with the 1.5s, Las Vegas, Kansas, Charlotte, just using those like high speed intermediates, I think is the best way to look at Texas. I mean, if we look at the data last year, just in general, I would say that you could comp it to Las Vegas, even though they're not very like Las Vegas is more steepy. The tire fall off has been a little bit more, but I think you're going to use that data because like, if you've been fast in the next gen car on 1.5s, you've been fast pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think also you can maybe pull in a little bit like Michigan. Guys who tend to do well at Texas, I noticed, have also done well at Michigan. Maybe that's partly because they were more similar in terms of the time of year on the calendar back in 2022 and 23. But I definitely notice, there's guys that tend to pop up a little bit at Texas that also kind of popped up at Michigan. But yeah, you're right. By and large, we're grouping it with the 1.5 mile tracks. And you really nailed it there with the tire codes. The Las Vegas tire codes were the same as the Texas tire codes last year. So you can really lean on last year's Texas data. And this year, I think Las Vegas early data as well, to kind of handicap Texas. Any other ways you're handicapping Texas? I know, like, for example, for Martinsville, we're talking like pit road stuff, but it's a little less important when you can actually pass. Like you mentioned, Blaney going from the back to the front with a pit issue at Texas. So yeah. Any other ways we're looking to handicap Texas before we get into our picks?
No, I mean, pit road data is always fascinating. It's always good to kind of see who's trending up, who's trending down on pit road. Like Kyle Busch, he's had speed. He's just been awful on pit road. And I look more at pit road stuff like in top 10 bets and even in more like the DFS world than the betting world. Cause like, a guy that's running like 25th and has like Austin Dillon is the perfect example, right? Like his pit crew has been phenomenal for like 3 years and he gains speed, like spots on pit road every weekend. And then he loses it back on track. So like for race winning stuff, like maybe it skews you a little bit, but I mean, overall, I'm just kind of looking at the speed that we've had on these high speed intermediates. And I mean, I might even put a little bit more like emphasis on Vegas from earlier this year because we have the new Ford body, because we have the new Toyota body. And like, it was chilly. If I remember correctly, it was cold in Vegas. So like, it's not going to be necessarily cold in Texas, but like, it's going to be 75, 80. That's way different than running a 100-degree racetrack. So I think Las Vegas from earlier this year and then just high-speed 1.5s from, and maybe even throw in some Michigan data. I like that call.
Yeah, it was cold and windy at Vegas. I mean, I was at the race, and it was cold and windy pre-race. But then right around the time the race started, the winds died down a little bit, not a ton, a little bit. And the sun had been out long enough that it started getting like comfortable. So it was, I think, in the low to mid 60s in Vegas for the race, and it was really comfortable, honestly. But it'll be a little warmer for Texas, but it won't, like you said, it won't be hot. So we're not going to have like just all the issues that come with excessive heat as well. So should be a really fun race. But that is our Texas preview. Now it's time to dive into our bets. As always, we're going to take you for a lap around the track at Texas Motor Speedway. 4 turns, 1 pick from Stevie, and 1 pick from me for each turn before we drive into victory lane. So it is time to wave the green flag on the Auto Trader Echo Park Automotive 400 and dive into turn 1. Okay, Stevie, green flag is out. Looks like you're going with a group bet for turn 1.
Yeah, we're going to talk throughout the podcast about like value, and there's not a ton of like early week value and per se, but this is one that like kind of just jumped off the page to me. And like, I almost don't hate betting 2 drivers in this group, just kind of cornering the market. Like, it's group 4, group D, depending on the site you're looking at. It's Logano, Bowman, Keselowski, and Buscher. And Buscher and Keselowski are both plus 300 in this group. And like, my model has them as like the clear favorites in this group, like not even close favorites in this one. So since the start of last year, Buscher ranks among these 4 drivers, the highest among these 4 drivers in speed. Buscher ranked top 3 in speed at Texas last year and at Vegas earlier this season, which is the 2 races that we just talked about with this tire combo. Alex Bowman is not ranked inside the top 10 in speed on a high-speed intermediate track since Las Vegas 1 of last season. So 6 races outside the top 10. And Logano is only ranked inside the top 10 once, and that was at Vegas where he ranked 10th in speed. So Buscher and Keselowski, far favorites for me, and they're the 2 dogs in this group. So you could bet both of them here, and I feel like you're getting the best odds at getting them at plus 300 of each bet. So I wrote down Buscher plus 300, but I don't mind taking Buscher and Keselowski and trying to lock up just 1 unit on this bet.
Yeah, this is an interesting one for me because I agree with you on Chris Buscher. Keselowski at Vegas just wasn't very good, though.
Yeah.
In green flag speed, he was 16th, and now it's a little skewed because Chris Buscher was first, but Buscher only ran 27 laps and never got to the high tire wear portion of his run,
right.
So he's doesn't really count in green flag speed. So Keselowski's really 15th, but then when you look at some guys who were behind him, Corey LaJoie was faster, but had a problem late, which cost him some late race speed. So, like, if you look at his healthy car, he was faster than Brad Keselowski, which is why I use my flags metric. Similar for Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez was probably better than Keselowski, but he was one of those, along with McDowell, who took 0 tires, stayed out, and then just faded really hard. So if you strategy adjust Daniel Suarez, I had him as faster than Brad Keselowski as well at Las Vegas. So Kez scares me a little bit, but I'm right there with you on the Buscher side. And now this pick is Chris Buscher at 3-1 in this group. So I can definitely get you with you there on Chris Buscher, but I'm scared a little bit of Kez just from that Vegas performance. But hey, now they have the data from that race as well. Although Buscher only ran 27 laps, but at least they have something to go off of from Las Vegas. And Bowman, you're right. He hasn't had the speed since Las Vegas 1 of last year. That's more than a full season now at these high-speed intermediates. He didn't quite have the speed at Las Vegas either. And then Joey Logano was just in that same neighborhood with Alex Bowman as well. Both kind of lower teens cars at Las Vegas, which is right around where Brad Keselowski was in the mid-teens. So I definitely think Buscher should be the favorite in this group. But for my turn 1 pick, I'm going to go to a bet I was able to get at 35-1 earlier this week. It is now down to 15-1 as the longest we can get it, but I still like it there. And that's Zane Smith for a top 10 at 15-1. Look, I bet him for a top 10 finish 12-1 at Vegas, and I loved it. And then he went out and set just crazy good times in practice. He was actually in practice better than his teammates Corey LaJoie and Carson Hocevar on every single long run metric, and he had lower tire fall off than them in practice, but he only ran 3 clean laps really in the race, and caught the wall on lap 4 and ended up damaging his car. So he didn't get to show off what he had in Las Vegas, but his teammates, Corey LaJoie ran inside the top 5 for most of the first half of the Las Vegas race. And Carson Hocevar was hanging out right around outside the top 10 Carson Hocevar had a better green flag speed and flags metric than Brad Keselowski, for example. And he was right there in that Joey Logano, Alex Bowman neighborhood in the lower teens for green flag speed and flags. So this is a team that really brought it at Las Vegas. And if that carries over to Texas, that would be fantastic. And Zane Smith, great at 1.5 miles in the truck series. That was one of his better track types. The shorter, flatter tracks, and then 1.5 miles were his kind of bread and butter. And for some reason, Coda, he always had Coda figured out as well in the truck series. But I don't know. I think it's still too long at 15-1. I have this more at like 11 or 12-1 as fair value. So if you want to bet 15-1, still pretty thin value at this point, but it's all I have to go by. You know, I have very few bets this week, so it's one of the few I have to go by that I still like, and that's Zane Smith at 15-1.
So the thing about Zane and betting him early in the week, we have no idea when he's going to randomly have a Trackhouse prep car. We got to remember that he is going to be a Trackhouse driver next year. This charter is getting transferred to Trackhouse next year. He's a Trackhouse driver. Yes, he's running for Spire, but he's a Trackhouse driver. So, like, we're going to have weeks where Zane has a Trackhouse car, and we're not going to know unless there's a report, like, early in the week. So, like, getting him at 15-1 for a top 10 early in the week is great. So I'm on this with you. I like this. I just threw a little sprinkle on this as well.
He finished 10th at Charlotte last year. And of course that was in the 38 car, I believe it was, for Front Row Motorsports. So that was the car that Todd Gilliland, vacated for like 5 or 6 races and raced with Rick Ware instead. And Zane took essentially Todd Gilliland's car to a top 10 finish at Charlotte last year. Now 600 miles more attrition, but you get the idea. This is a guy that's capable of running in or near the top 10. And let's be real, all you have to do is run near the top 10. And if we get a late restart, anything can happen, as we saw even at Martinsville. I mean, we saw Tyler Reddick and Ryan Preece bomb their way forward at the end of the Martinsville race on new tires. They were sitting outside the top 10, 12, and they finished 7th and 9th respectively. So certainly anything can happen as long as you're hanging around the top 10 or 15 late in a race. So turn 1 down, it is time to continue through turns 1 and 2 into turn 2. All right, turn 2, Stevie. I'm going to be tailing you in this turn. So what is your pick here?
Yeah, going to Legacy with Erik Jones here for top 10 plus 220. Texas has been a great track for Jones, and I'm hoping the Toyota speed that we've kind of just been waiting for Legacy kind of shows up this weekend. I mean, he was one of the best cars here last year, hit the wall late in that race. He was really good here in 2022 as well. I mean, we know that Toyota has the speed. I'm betting on the talent. Like, I know Jones struggled at Las Vegas, but I'm literally just betting on Erik Jones's talent, betting on Toyota. And I mean, I feel like 220, I'd bet this down to like 2-1, so plus 200. I got it at plus 250, but I still like it at 220. So just 2-1. Anything better than that is definitely what I like here for Erik Jones top 10 early in the week.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. I haven't bet it myself yet. I'm just trying to, make sure I really like all the value that I have. And I do like this one. And the reason is I like Legacy Motor Club this weekend. So for my turn 2, I don't have a pick, but if I did have something, I would probably be tailing Stevie here on Erik Jones top 10. But I like Legacy Motor Club this weekend. Obviously, Erik Jones, he ran top 3, top 5 most of the race last year at Texas. Now that was with Legacy being in the Chevy, but you mentioned it going over to Toyota. Now that should only help. And they'll have all that Toyota data from Las Vegas where Toyota was the dominant manufacturer, even though Kyle Larson won. So, it's definitely a good situation for Legacy, given they have a driver that just ran amazing here last year, and they're potentially upgrading, going from lower tier Chevy equipment to better tier, better treatment with Toyota. And now Erik Jones's teammate, John Hunter Nemechek, is somebody I'm super interested in this weekend. I haven't found a bet that I like other than I did sprinkle 300-1 right at the drop. And it's no longer 300-1, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend sprinkling an outright on him. But John Hunter Nemechek, his bread and butter is the 1.5 mile track. If you look in the Truck Series, you look in the Xfinity Series, all of his best races and a lot of his wins are at 1.5 miles. Dominant wins at Texas in the Truck Series and in the Xfinity Series. Dominant wins at Kansas, Vegas, Charlotte. I mean, he's won it literally all 4.5 miles in the lower series. So this is a guy, John Hunter Nemechek, who we're coming to his best track type with a team that just had a driver run inside the top 3 most of the race last year. I don't hate, like I said, a 300-1 sprinkle. I think maybe the longest is 200-1. I don't think I would necessarily sprinkle 200-1, but I'm less price sensitive when you're just taking long shot funsy bets. I don't really care as much, but his top 10 is 6.5-1. I was hoping it'd be more in that Zane Smith range of like 10 or 12 or 15. So I haven't bet his top 10, but I'm trying to find some ways to get John Hunter Nemechek. And I do think, like, for those who play DFS, he'll probably be a guy I look at writing up in tournaments in some way, shape, or form as well. But just curious your thoughts on him as well, in addition to Erik Jones.
Yeah, I think you could potentially wait on both of these, right? Because if they struggle in qualifying, you're probably going to get better odds just in general. So I already bet the Erik Jones top 10. Like I said, I got it at plus 250. So like if it starts creeping in like the 180 range by the time we get this posted and everything, I think you can wait on Jones and John Hunter and just kind of hope they don't qualify well. So I'm with you. Like, I like John Hunter. I like Legacy. We talked about this the first couple weeks of the season where we expect Legacy to be better this year. They were a tier like 3 Chevy team last year, and now they're right up there like tier 1, 2-ish here with Toyota. So I just expect Legacy to be better in general.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. So can potentially wait here and see their on-track speed as well. And I don't even mind taking a little bit shorter number if we see they're fast as well, right?
Yep.
So that's one of those spots where it's okay to not necessarily get the best number early in the week if you have more data that will help you make a better decision as well. So that is our turn 2. It is the Legacy Motor Club turn. Erik Jones top 10 for Stevie. Nothing for me, but I do like Legacy Motor Club this weekend. That means we have 2 turns down, 2 turns to go, and we're going to drive down the backstretch before we get to turn 3. All right, Stevie, time to drive into turn 3. What do you have for us here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to Ty Gibbs outright here at 18-1. I mean, we've been saying it pretty much all season. The win is coming for Gibbs, and I'm pot committed at this point. Anytime that Gibbs is going to come in at a number 18-1, I'm going to bet his outright because I just know like it's just going to all click one race for Gibbs, and it's going to happen soon. He had a lot of speed at the start of the race last year, and I don't remember if it was the stage 1 caution or when it happened, like off the top of my head. But he was coming out of his pit box and just absolutely drilled Denny Hamlin, and it destroyed the car. Like he hit him so hard that it just absolutely destroyed the car. So we look at Vegas. We talked about how we're running the same tire code as Vegas. He was top 5 in speed in that race. He was fast throughout the entire race, some pit road stuff, but they're going to clean that kind of stuff up. After kind of like a few mediocre short flats for him, we're getting better odds finally on Gibbs again. Like he's back down to 18-1 here to start the week. I don't want to wait on this, and the reason that I don't want to wait on this is because I expect Ty Gibbs to be fast in practice and qualifying, kind of why I like him, and not necessarily showing like this as like a great value bet, but I just know like if I want to bet Ty Gibbs like I want to, I don't want to pay like 12-1 after practice and qualifying. So I'm jumping on Ty Gibbs here at 18-1, getting this early, and I'm, again, just betting on the talent and the speed. It's a JGR car, and Ty Gibbs is a guy we're going to talk about for the next 20 years. This kid is extremely talented.
Yeah, you're right. We're going to be talking about him for decades. One of the biggest talents to come through in years. We always have big talents that come through. Christopher Bell a few years ago, for example. But Ty Gibbs is right up there with some of the best talents we've ever seen. So 18-1. You might be twisting my arm a little bit here on this one. I technically don't show value on it at 18-1, but it's close enough that I may just, override my model because this is probably the best number we'll see on him all week. And you're right. It's a JGR card, 18-1. I probably shouldn't be overthinking this much, but I'm feeling a little extra price sensitive this week. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. I do feel like Texas is a little different from Las Vegas, whereas Vegas has classically been, JGR and Hendrick Motorsports in the past few years. Texas mixes things up a little bit, and it's a little, get some interesting names in there. You get, Blaney has always been pretty good at Texas, so it's a little more of a mixed bag for me with Texas, which is why I'm not like slamming down Joe Gibbs Racing all over the place, or 2311 as well all over the place. But I probably shouldn't be overthinking it and should be rolling with Ty Gibbs at 18-1. But for my turn 3 pick, I am actually going away from that JGR Hendrick Motorsports deal, and I'm going to take Daniel Suarez for a top 10 at plus 240. And look, Daniel Suarez has been good at Texas, specifically Texas. If we look and we rank the drivers' average running position from 1 to 36 each race at the 2 Texas races, he's been inside the top 13 in both of them, with one of them inside the top 10. He has an average finish of 10 at Texas in the 2 next-gen races. Plus, some of those other similar tracks, like I mentioned, Michigan. He's been really good at Michigan, which has a lot of similarities to Texas in terms of like lower tire wear. Back then, again, it was a similar time of year, only like a month and a half apart. So I do think this is a spot where we could lean on a little bit of Daniel Suarez. Again, his green flag speed is going to be misleading at Las Vegas because he ran like 40 or 50 laps on old tires at Las Vegas, which you just, he and McDowell both just tanked straight through the field, but he did not tank as much as McDowell did. So green flag speed is going to be misleading, but he jumps up more in my flags metrics when I adjust for strategy and the number of cars on a specific strategy. So I do think Daniel Suarez is certainly capable of a top 10 finish at Texas. Ross Chastain has been good at Texas, his teammate. So I think this is a solid track for Trackhouse. And I guess if we're on the Zane Smith Trackhouse train, I'll go with another Trackhouse driver, Daniel Suarez, at plus 240 for a top 10.
Yeah, I don't mind this one. I also don't mind waiting to see if he has some speed too, and just paying like plus 130, plus 150 numbers on Suarez. But
yeah,
I mean, Suarez is someone that we know he's going to have top 10 upside. He has top 10 upside every single week, it feels like right now. So Trackhouse, again, I'm on the Trackhouse like bandwagon. I just feel like this team they're doing everything right. So in that aspect, and like, Suarez for me is just, can he put a complete race together? This guy has speed and like does stuff. We won't even call it like dumb stuff. Stuff happens to him sometimes, whether it be just like something happens on pit road or he runs into somebody or somebody runs into him. Like, I feel like Daniel Suarez is just unlucky. Let's just call it unlucky. Daniel Suarez is just unlucky. So, I mean, when you have him put a whole race together, he has top 5 upside. So, yeah, I mean, I don't mind this.
Yeah, I mean it's plus 240. You definitely need to shop this line because I see it as low as plus 170 out there. So definitely a line you want to shop and find the best price if you're going to take it early week. Otherwise, wait and see if he has speed in practice. But I like 240 enough that I'm taking it now ahead of practice and qualifying. So we've rolled through turn 3. That means we have 1 turn left, and that's turn 4. Our final turn, Stevie. It looks like you're going back to a driver you've already bet earlier in turn 1.
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting my Suarez bet in here. I'm getting it at plus 260 in Florida. So there you go.
There you go. I like it.
All right, Chris Buscher, top 10, plus 110. This line has moved already. Like, it was plus 130. I like this. If you can get this at plus money, I almost like my model likes this to like minus 120. So I'm on Buscher. He's been really fast at Texas and in Las Vegas, like we talked about. Again, like Vegas was a shorter experiment for him, but the speed was there. And that's what we need to see, right? We just need to see the speed is there. Buscher had an average running position of 6.0 at Texas last year. It was the 3rd highest. And his driver rating was 103.7, which is the 4th best. We're getting plus money top 10 on a guy that was 4th best in driver rating and 3rd best average running position last year. So, I mean, again, value this week, early in the week is tough, but my model is definitely showing a lot of value here on Buscher, at a top 10 at plus money. And again, like we talked about him in the group, I like Buscher at 30-1 to win the race. Like I'm on.
I was
Chris
gonna
Buscher.
Say, when we talk victory lane, I threw down in our outline like question mark Buscher 33-1 or whatever. So yeah, I don't hate I don't hate a little sprinkle on Buscher outright as well if you're getting in the 30s. So right there with you on Chris Buscher. I think he's got plenty of upside and certainly top 10. Probably should be favored to finish inside the top 10. So +1, one of the early week values that I definitely do not mind. For my turn 4 pick, I'm a little bummed this moved overnight because I put it in the outline at -130. I wake up today and it's -160, but I'm going to take under 11.5 cautions. I'll still pay the juice here at -160. Look, I know the first Texas race in 2022 had 16 cautions, but I think that's why it's pulling this line up, because that was the first year of the next gen. We had so many tire issues, as we talked about in that 2022 race, that those aren't like cautions that are going to be repeatable now that we were not going to have those tire issues. Plus, that race was a 500-mile race, so there was extra laps and time for caution. Well, now, last year at Texas, we had 11 cautions, and that was probably on the high side. If you look at, at the races last year, and we look at cautions per mile, it had the second most cautions per mile of all the 1.5 mile tracks. The only one that had more was the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte. So I think, if we're talking about 11 cautions being on the high side, I certainly would favor under 11.5 cautions. And here's the other thing, right? If we look at year one of these races in the next gen car, so 2022, there were 71 cautions in the 6.5 mile races. Last year, there was only 58, so 13 fewer cautions over 6 races. That's a decrease of more than 2 per race. And now, third year of this car, teams getting a better handle on it. We only had 6 cautions at Las Vegas, 2 for stages. We had Chris Buscher losing a tire, for example. So that wasn't a tire issue. That was just like, it came off. I think it was improperly secured and stuff. So we're sitting here with Las Vegas at 6 cautions, which is the second fewest cautions of the next gen era at 1.5 miles. So we could be in for another decrease in cautions at 1.5 miles this year, potentially. So if 11, again, is already on the high side and we have a potential decrease, then the high side probably should be more like 9 or 10 at this point for 400-mile race. So I'm going to go under 11.5 cautions and pay the juice at -160.
I'm gonna simplify it for people even more. This line has hit 14 of the last 15 Texas races.
There you go.
Just make it simple for you.
To be fair, a lot of that is pre next gen, right? So.
No, yeah, for sure. But the thing is, like, the only time this line has hit in the last 15 races is when we were blowing tires every 25 to 30 laps. That issue's been fixed. Yeah. So the outlier is the tire race, and even in the next gen era, 1.5 cautions have been down. So. I just overall 14 to 15 for sure. 14 to 15.
And even just doing the math, right? So in the next gen era, there has been an average, if you scale it to miles, each race to 600 miles, 500 miles, 400 miles. If you just scale the miles to a 400-mile race, there's been an average of 9.47 cautions per race, and that includes that high year of 2022. While we still had tire issues at Vegas, which was early in the season. 12 cautions in the first next-gen race. The Texas tire issues like crazy. The Coca-Cola 600 that first year, which was absolutely crazy and had 18 cautions. That stuff isn't going to continue. So it's one of those spots where, if we just look at 2023 to present, the average number of cautions per 400 miles is right around 9. So, a whole half caution even lower. So, I think this is just a spot where, got to take under 11.5, even if it's -160. So that is my turn 4 pick. Stevie's turn 4 pick, Chris Buscher, top 10 finish at +110. So one thing left to do, Stevie, we're driving into victory lane with a driver we have picked in victory lane before this year. Didn't work out then, but it was close. That was Atlanta. Can we get it done with this driver at Texas?
Well, I hope so. We're going to go to Bubba Wallace at 16-1. And I mean, this is a car that was a top 3 car all race last year at Texas. And him and Larson were battling. I think it was like 15 laps to go, and Larson got loose underneath him. And then Bubba restarted the race where, he was the control car, and Briscoe ran him up the track, and Byron said, "Peace out." I mean, this is a guy that could have won this race last year, and we're getting him at 16-1. I mean, when we look at the high speed intermediates, he's had top 5 speed in 3 of those races out of the 7 races. And some of those races, he had some issues. So again, Reddick was the second best car at Las Vegas. If we're looking at like just odds in general, the odds are probably pretty right. I mean, I expect Larson to be the best car. I expect Reddick to be really good. But and Byron and Hamlin and like those guys, but I think Bubba is just kind of a guy that is gonna qualify well, and he's gonna practice well, and we're not gonna see 16-1 again this week. So I mean, again, I don't know if like this is necessarily like value, but this is the best line that we're gonna get on Bubba Wallace. And I mean, again, I'm you're price sensitive, and I'm like, all right, I'm just throwing value out of the window, and I just want picks that I don't think I'm going to get better lines on this week more than anything else.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I am being price sensitive in saying that I have not bet Bubba yet at 16-1. I probably will. You all will know if I do. I'll obviously track it in the Action Network app. We'll post it in the Action Network Discord if I do. But I'm with you. Bubba last year, I mean, number 1 at Texas in driver rating, most laps led, was the only driver that ran inside the top 15 on every single lap of the whole race. Number 1 in quality pass percentage, best average running position. He had the best car last year at Texas, period. And, there's no other ways to go about it. Like, he had the best car at Texas last year. So 16-1, when you think, well, this guy had the best car at Texas last year, definitely sounds enticing. The only issue is like my model isn't quite there, and it's because some of the other things, right? It still looks at your overall driver quality. Bubba Wallace isn't quite on the quality level of Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., Christopher Bell, etc. Some of his other fellow Toyota drivers, and also just at mile and a half, he's been very good, but he's failed to close the deal every single time except once at Kansas in 2022. So the model, takes into account a lot of other things that isn't just one Texas race. And that's why it's not quite showing value on Bubba at 16-1. But again, I may just override the model and bet him because you're right. This is the best probably we'll see on Bubba Wallace all week. So I probably should just go with it and say, screw the value side of things. Just play the best line on what should be one of the best drivers. So that is going to do it for us. Thank you for listening to the Auto Trader Echo Park Automotive 400 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's Motorsports Betting Podcast. We'll be back next time this week to talk bets for the Geico 500 Super Speedway racing at Talladega Super Speedway. On behalf of my co-host, Stephen Young, thanks again for listening. We'll see you back next week on Running Hot from Action Network.